Welcome into On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton. I'm joined today. We thought it'd be a good time to talk about Directors Cup, given the off week. Brett Wilkinson, Dr. Brett Wilkinson, your expert on the Directors Cup. Longhorns, of course, have won 4 of the last 5 Directors Cups, going for a 5 out of 6 this year. We're going to talk to Brett about where they sit right now. Brett, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me again, Bobby. And yeah, Texas is going one for the thumb, as they like to say.
Yeah. For those that don't know, Brett, you're a graduate of the University of Texas, now a doctor in the New Orleans area. So actually, this show is brought to you by Dr. Brett Robin. We have 2 Bretts that are doctors on this show officially, I guess. That's got to be a first. But Brett, I got to ask you, last year it came down to the wire for Texas. I mean, literally the final event in a track meet I guess against USC was the final runner-up. How did that all break down, and how were you following that? Because I was trying to follow it that Saturday, and man, I was like, I can't believe they're getting ready to lose this. But Texas ended up winning. How did that all describe how that all went down?
Yeah, that was an amazingly dramatic finish with 3 teams finishing within 5 points of each other. And I knew it could be really close between Texas and USC coming down to the end, depending on exactly where they finished in track and field. And then, never say die, Stanford comes out of the blue. And they were 1 place away in a long distance race. I think it was maybe the 10K. And had they finished 1 place better, they would have vaulted up the track and field rankings, and they would have won the Directors Cup once again. So it was so dramatic as we were coming down to the end, and we were trying to see how the finish was going to go based on predicted scores and track, and it made it a really fun way to see how the Directors Cup was going to conclude last year. I don't know that we'll always have that much drama. Sometimes the winner is somewhat claimed with a little bit of a whimper, but last year was really dramatic, so that was a lot of fun.
Well, I think it's interesting. You've because of your expertise in this area, and you've kind of carved this little niche out for yourself. I think it's awesome. You've actually become like the voice of it, and you've gotten to know people like Chris Del Conte, the athletic director. In fact, I was talking to you the other day, and you said that you were a guest and down on the field for the San Jose State game as part of that celebration. And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, obviously, Chris Del Conte really cares about winning this award. And I think it's a great award that really encompasses his overarching view of the athletic department. He's not here to bring football, basketball, and baseball success. When he's been on your show and others, you hear him talk about every coach. What does it take for you to be top 5? What does it take for you to be a national champion? And he's really putting those resources in every program on campus, which is amazing and not something we've seen done before at Texas to this degree, and not something we see done at other schools as well. And that's what has allowed Texas to be competitive in this space and start winning Directors Cup. So it's really important to him. The funny thing is, there's no one in his department who's crunching these numbers. And so as I became kind of a public voice of this, really through a Twitter account, I was able to connect with him and some of the people in his department. And he reaches out to me, we communicate, he asks me for updates. I'm able to break the news to him if we're winning or losing. So he has come to rely on me for scoring, which is great. And I asked him what game they were going to do the trophy presentation. And sure enough, he invited me to come out to the San Jose State game. And what I didn't know was he was going to ask me to come down on the field during that presentation. So I got to be right there as he was getting the cup. And that was a really cool moment, be down there with all the athletes who earned the cup. Chris Del Conte, who puts in so much work to make it happen. And, I'm just the guy on the back end crunching numbers. They're not winning or losing based on my efforts, but I'm glad to be involved with it in just a little way.
That's one of the things about Texas. It takes a village, Brett. It takes a village.
Certainly does. I love CDC says, United Texas is a reckoning. So I play a small part of that. Like I said, I'm not contributing to any of the success. I'm just calculating the success and the aftermath, but I'm glad to be able to participate.
Well, I think it's awesome that you got to go down there. I think it's awesome that he invited you. I mean, that just shows he kind of cares about the people. It's nice. It's nice to hear that in the background.
I'll say this on CDC. You know, he's up at the highest echelons of society of our university, but he also relates so well to the little guy. You know, myself included, other fans. You know, the way that he interacts with people on Twitter, answering every little question and complaint. He really is a humble individual. And just a great leader of our athletic department. So, you know, I really appreciate him and the asset he is to our university.
All right. Before we get into this next point, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, and that is Dr. Brett Robin, who we mentioned just moments ago. Dr. Brett Robin is an orthopedic specialist in the Austin area, Central Texas, Georgetown, Killeen, offices there, and he is accepting new patients now. If you're looking for a top-notch orthopedic, give Dr. Robin a call, 512-856-1000. Get back to your active lifestyle and doing what you love. For those unaware, Dr. Robin is a former Longhorn running back. Brett and I remember him playing for the Longhorns, and he knows what it takes to stay in the game, and he's here for athletes of all ages. He specializes, again, in musculoskeletal health. Again, give him a call, 512-856-1000. Brett's one of those guys that he's one of the athletes that put himself on the line. Couple of changes this year that you wanted to go into, and then we want to talk about how Texas is doing so far in the various sports, because it's not just football that you're monitoring in volleyball. There's some other things going on, but there have been fundamental changes in how the Directors' Cup is being scored this year that could affect Texas in the ultimate outcome. Give folks a sample or an understanding of exactly what I'm talking about there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And just to quickly recap, the Directors' Cup scoring, for those who haven't heard, I know there's a lot of new subscribers to this channel since the last time I was on, which is amazing. Scores are calculated by your 19 highest sports on campus. Each sport can score between 0 and 100 points, depending on how you finish in NCAA championship competition. And of those 19, there are now 5 required sports. So once they added required sports in 2018, you had to include volleyball, both of your basketball teams, and baseball. And to give you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, those are the biggest, the largest number of participating schools in what I would call a true team sport. Track and field is not a team sport. There's a team, but it's a bunch of individual events. So those were the 4 highest participation team sports. Everybody had to include those. And then the 5th, if you look at that list of participation, is women's soccer. And they actually added that to the list of required sports this past season. And, you know, next on the list is football. And I would really push the Directors' Cup to add football as a required sport. To me, it hasn't quite made sense that the most popular sport in America by far, is not a required part of this calculation. Though the teams that win typically have good football teams, but Stanford has won plenty of Directors' Cup with a football team that's not making a bowl game. So I would love to see that added as the 6th required sport, but that's
they added.
Control.
So to be clear, they added this year or this offseason women's soccer.
Right.
Women's soccer.
That change was made last year. It kind of
okay.
snuck up on me. I don't always go back and review all the official scoring documents. I already have it in my head, but they did add that. Fortunately, because the teams at the top of the standings, all of them had successful women's soccer teams that were going to be included anyways. It really didn't have an impact on any of the scoring or anything we were looking at, but that was a little bit of a gotcha moment near the end that I had to make sure I had all the calculations correct still. But we did, and that's going to be a required sport going forward, which might certainly have an impact and a negative impact on the Longhorns this year.
Yeah, why do you say that? The women's soccer team, we've been following volleyball a lot because they're just on such a roll. What's the deal with women's soccer? They're not off to a great start right now?
Yeah, winning is fun, and being a fan of a winning team is a lot of fun. So it's been really fun watching the women's volleyball team. The soccer team has really struggled out of the gate. Some of the ugliest losses that they've ever had as a soccer program, and they're not putting in many wins either. So I believe they're 0-2 now in conference. They play Vanderbilt tonight. And it was a team that had some good success over the last few years. I mean, Lexi Misimo was probably the best women's soccer player to ever step foot on campus. She had Trinity Byers, who unfortunately was hurt last year. She was amazing. She might have been the second best soccer player we've ever had. And then, some great goalkeepers, some great defenders. That they've really had a good program the last few years. But with those players moving on, MJ Cox was probably the third best player on that team. She's coming back from an injury and is not quite to form. So the team just doesn't quite have that spark this year. They're not playing great defense. They're not scoring as many goals as they did, and it's just the losses are stacking up. I believe they're 2-7-1 right now, if I have that record correct. And I really don't think they're going to make the NCAA tournament at this point.
Yeah, that'll give them a 0 in that scoring methodology that now will have to go towards that. What about other sports on campus? Obviously, volleyball, football, anything else going on right now?
Yeah, no need to touch on football more than you already do here. Y'all are covering that. And, I love to hear all the volleyball talk on here. That team's amazing right now. You've got freshman studs that are coming in. Jared Elliott is recruiting great players, freshmen that are making immediate impacts, players that have come in, developed at Texas, and then has used the transfer portal, expertly, brings in an All-American and Tori Stafford. I believe she was at Pitt. A second-team All-American and Ramsey Gary. So he's just added experienced players at position, developed his own players, and that team's rolling right now. So I know Jerry keeps mentioning Nebraska and Texas might be headed for a face-off, and that very well might be true with the way those teams are playing. The two other teams that are competing right now are the cross-country teams. Texas has benefited from the way that the cross-country postseason is set up. They're in regions, and if you're in the top 2 in your region, you get an automatic qualifier for the NCAA championship. Well, the region that Texas is in, the South Central region, is by far the worst cross-country region in the country.
Okay.
Probably Arkansas is the only team in the region that really earns their spot in the championship. And Texas has been able to sneak in as that second best team in the region and get an automatic qualifying spot. For the Directors Cup, if you finish in the top 5, you do get 27 or 28 points depending on a few factors. So I really think that's the path that Texas is looking at in scoring points this year for the Directors Cup, finishing top 5 in the region. The rosters from last year did that, and they really haven't improved or changed all that much. They didn't bring any stellar freshmen that are just, crushing it. They didn't bring any major transfers. So I think cross country will be at about that same level this year. What I am interested in, what happens with the future of cross country and track and field at Texas? The scholarships are so limited in track and field. 12 for men, 18 for women. And that's split between your track and field program, all your runners, your sprinters, your long distance, your jumpers, your throwers, and your cross-country athletes. So you have a 45-person roster with pretty small number of scholarships. Texas and CDC, I know, is dedicated to fully sponsoring all of those scholarships. So Texas with 45 track and field scholarships, and they're not having to decide where to give those. And, Texas has really gone more towards jumpers, sprinters, some throwers. I think they can now get some more scholarship athletes that will run distance for them, not only in track and field, but also cross country. So I hope this program can really, over the next couple of years, develop into a top cross country program. And if we do that, Texas will really be rolling.
All right, interesting. All right, Brett, you have anything you want to finish up with? I think that's a pretty good primer. We'll be visiting with you off and on the rest of this season and into the spring as Texas tries to make it 5 out of 6, one for the thumb, as you said. Anything you want to add before we get going?
Yeah, the only thing I'll say, the fall for Texas and the Directors Cup is really just the intro. I was trying to think of some analogies. It's really like a college basketball game. That first section of the game before you get to the first 4-minute timeout. Texas doesn't win the Directors Cup in the fall. Texas doesn't lose the Directors Cup in the fall. Things will really heat up in the winter and spring, and the early rankings and returns from those teams, I think we'll see a lot of fireworks for Texas in those sports. So that'll be a lot of fun. Football and volleyball success in the fall will be fantastic. But it's really going to heat up come winter and spring. So if you want to follow along, see how things are shaking out, and follow all these other sports on campus, make sure to give me a follow on X or Twitter. I'm going to stick with the old name still, but I'm there at direct_cupdate. So I love having people interact with me on there, ask questions. So feel free to give me a follow, and follow me on Texas Football website as well. We're running some threads. We'll be covering this information as well.
I love it, Brett. Thank you so much. Dr. Brett Wilkinson, of direct_cupdates on Twitter, a friend of the program and just a tremendous overall guy. Congratulations for all you've done. I'm so happy you were able to go down on the field for the San Jose State game. That's a great thrill. Also, thank you to our sponsor, Dr. Brett Robin, over at the Austin Orthopedic Institute. You guys have a good weekend. For Dr. Brett Wilkinson, I'm Bobby Burton. Hook 'em horns.
Hook 'em.